Hello Math 140 students, we will pick up on page 7, section 2.3. So the reciprocal of a number is the multiplicative inverse. The reciprocal of a fraction is found by flipping its numerator and denominator. So here is our warm-up. Find the reciprocal of the following numbers. So what this is telling us is to switch the numerator and denominator. So if we are switching the numerator and the denominator, well, I know here that my numerator is 3 and my denominator is 7. So if I'm finding the reciprocal, I'm going to switch it. So I have 7 over 3. Again, for number 2, I'm just going to switch my numerator and denominator. So the reciprocal would be 9 over negative 2. For number 3, what's going on is that even though you don't see it, this really has a denominator of 1. So my numerator is 8, my denominator is 1. So the reciprocal would be 1 over 8. And here, if I have 0 over 1, well, that reciprocal would be 1 over 0. But remember what happens when 0 is in the denominator. That tells you that this is undefined. So the reciprocal for 0 would be undefined. And this is found in your 1.2 lecture. If you need to go back and figure out why you have division by 0 is undefined. Now we want to solve. So here, if I'm going to solve for my y value, I would divide by 3 since the opposite of multiplication is division. So I have y is equal to a negative 41 over 3. And we want to keep the fraction. Now, if I have my x over negative 7 is equal to 14. Well, the x and the negative 7, they are being divided. So the opposite of division is to multiply. When I can multiply is going to be the reciprocal. So that reciprocal is going to be negative 7 over 1. We don't include the x because x is what you want by itself. And also remember from section 1.2 that negative 7 over 1 is the same as negative 7. There is no difference between those two numbers. So now if I were to cancel out negative 7 on both sides, I have the x by itself. And now I'm left with 14 times my negative 7, which brings me to a value of a negative 98. So I know that x is equal to a negative 98 is going to be my final answer. Well, we take that same process and we apply that to number 3. So I have 3/4 times y is equal to 12. So to get the y by itself, I am going to multiply by the reciprocal of the coefficient. And whatever I multiply on one side, I have to multiply the other side. So then here I can see that the 4's cancel and the 3's cancel. That's the whole reason you did this, to get y by itself. And now you have the multiplication of 12 over 1 times that 4 over 3. Well, you can think of it as 3 times 12, or 3 goes into 12 4 times. 3 times 4 is equal to 12. So now you're left with y is equal to 4 times 4. Well, 4 times 4 is going to give you to 16. So your answer here is y is equal to a 16. For number 4, if I have 8 over 15 is equal to a negative 4 over 5x. Well, you want to think about where the x is. And you want to get rid of that coefficient. So I'm going to do that by multiplying by the reciprocal. So I have 5 over negative 4. That I'm going to be multiplying by, so that the 5 and the negative 4 cancel, so you just have the x on that side. Now you can think of it as, well, 5 goes into 15 3 times, and I have negative 4 can be divided by 2 as a negative 2. Or actually, let's try that again. Negative 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1. And 8 divided by 4 is going to give me a 2. So now what you have is a 1 over negative 1 times 2 over 3 is equal to my x. So I have a 2 over negative 3 is equal to x, which is the same as saying negative 2 over 3 is equal to x. And so that is how I'm going to get my final answer. Now here are some problems for you guys to try out. So again, we want to think about multiplying by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal that we are going to be multiplying by is a 5 over a negative 4. So I have 5 over negative 4 times my 9 over 25. And so you still have the same reciprocal that you're multiplying on both sides. And the reason you do this is so that the coefficients cancel out, and now you're left with this. And again, if you guys want to use your calculator, you can. I have a 5 over negative 4 that's being multiplied, and here I have a 9 over 25, and my answer is a negative 9 over 20. So now I know that z is equal to a negative 9 over 20, and that is going to be my final answer. For number 2, we're going to combine like terms. I have these coefficients. So 14 minus 23, combine that together, and I'm going to get a negative 9. That is equal to, and here these are all y values. So these are all like terms. So I'm just going to add those together. So I have 12y minus 4y minus 5, and that's going to give me a positive 3y. So to get the y by itself, I'm going to divide by 3. So that negative 9 divided by 3 is a negative 3, and that's equal to my y value. Now we have some examples with word problems. So the first one says, the number 143 is the product of negative 11 and y. So remember that is represents your equals. So we have the 143 equals, and here if I have the word product, product means to multiply. So what are things that you are multiplying? You're multiplying negative 11 and y. So now you have the equation that 143 is equal to a negative 11 times y. And since you want to solve, then you divide by that coefficient, which is negative 11. So 143 divided by negative 11 is going to give you a negative 13. So a negative 13 is equal to y. And that is going to be your final answer. Now for number 2, it says n divided by 8 is 32. So here we have the word is, so that's an equal sign. So it's equal to a negative 32. And it says n is being divided by 8. So n is being divided by 8. So I really have n over 8 is equal to a negative 32. So to get the n by itself, I'm going to multiply by the coefficient of the numerical coefficient. So that would be 8. So I know that that would cancel. I'm left with n is equal to negative 32 times 8, and that gives me a negative 256. And that ends up becoming my final answer. And the quotient is the same as division. So the quotient of y and negative 4 is 68. So that is the equals. The quotient of y and negative 4. So I'm going to be dividing, because that's what quotient means, which is the same as a fraction. So I have y and negative 4. So I am going to multiply by the numerical coefficient, which would be timesing by a negative 4 on both sides. So I'm left with y is equal to 68 times negative 4, which is a negative 272 as my final answer. For number 4, it says Isabel bought 6 pounds of grapes for $10.74. What is the cost of 1 pound of grapes? So you can think of it as this is going to be your fraction. So your numerator and your denominator to represent this fraction. So what is the cost? So your numerator is going to be your cost. And here your denominator is going to be your pound. In particular, it would be 1 pound. So you have your fraction, which you have your amount of money over your pounds. So here the money that you have is $10.74. And the amount of pounds that you have is 6. So now you're just going to plug that into your calculator. So I'm going to have the fraction of 10 and 74 cents being divided by 6. So that gives me 179. So it's 179 for 1 pound of grape. So that ends up becoming my final answer. For your practice problems, it says Andres bought a used car for $12,000. Because the car was 4 years old, its price was 3/4 of the original price when the car was new. What was the original price of the car? Well, you know that this is how much total he bought it for. So I know that the total that he bought it for is that $12,000. Okay. And I know that because it's a used car, it's 3/4 of the original price. So here, if we look at the of in mathematics tells us to multiply. So this is saying 3/4 of the original price. Well, if we translate that into math, this is 3/4 times x, where x here is going to be the original price. Okay. So we know that 3/4 of the original price should equal to the amount that he paid. But we know the total cost. So I know that my equation is going to be 3/4 of the original cost is equal to my total cost, which is at $12,000. Okay. So x is going to represent my original cost. So to solve for this problem, I'm going to multiply by 3/4 on both sides. Or sorry, the reciprocal, which would be 4/3. So then here, what ends up happening is that the 3/4 times the reciprocal will just give you the x. And now we are going to multiply. So here we have the fraction, and we have the fraction 4 over 3 that's being multiplied by that 12,000. That's going to give us 16,000. So that 16,000, since it's x, represents the original cost. Okay. And that's going to be my final answer. And that is the end of section 2.3.